Good day, everyone. This is Lester Francabal, and together with my groupmates, Miss Onica Jasmine Del Leon, Miss Marielle N. Mato, and Mr. Richard Vidal, as well as Miss Nicole Anguste, we are here to present the types of letters. Next slide, please. And these types of letters that we are going to discuss are inquiry letter, claim letter, sales letter, and adjustment letter. Now, let's proceed first on the inquiry letter. Next slide, please. When we talk about inquiry letters are written for the purpose of asking for something from the recipient. Inquiries can be sent as a formal business letter, which is outside of your company, or as an email. Before sending your inquiry, you should be certain that the information is not available through other means, such as the company website. Now, let's move on to the different types of inquiry letter. There are three primary categories of inquiry letters. We have the status inquiries, routine inquiries, and sales-related inquiries. For the status inquiries are typically sent to request references or recommendations, while routine inquiries are letters written to an individual or company for the purpose of gathering specific information. And lastly, the sales-related inquiries, and this is the most common inquiry letters. Sales-related inquiries are written to a company or individual to obtain information about a product or service and may be the first step of collecting information for a report. And later on, I would be providing you an example of a sales-related inquiry. Next slide, please. Now, there are components of inquiry letters, and all inquiry letters or all types of letters have their own components. But for inquiry letter, we have the first component, which is introduction. Introduction, it is the purpose of providing your audience with the basic information of who, what, and why. Part of the introduction is the introduction of yourself and where you are from so that the recipient would be able to know who you are. You provide a statement of your purpose. Why are you writing the inquiry letter? And lastly, you include some subtle flattery, but only if the purpose is not sales related. So you have to make sure that the selection of words is very appropriate on the letter. Next slide, please. Next component of the inquiry letter is what we call the body. The purpose of the body is to provide the recipient with the inquiry, what you want from him or her, and what you will do with that information. So for example, you already have an inquiry. You are going to ask a question, or you already have something in mind that you would want to ask. So in the body of the letter, you should be able to provide what you really want from the recipient, meaning you should be direct to the point on what you really want from the recipient. Now, in a sales inquiry, which I would be providing an example later on, you might include the dimensions of the product, the quality, the price, the availability, the discount rates, the return rate, the service terms, or any other pertinent information relative to the product that you're asking for. If you are sending an inquiry for information, you will list no more than 5 questions. So you only have a limit of 5 questions per inquiry letter so that the recipient would not be bombarded with a lot of questions. Next slide, please. Lastly, or the last component of the inquiry letter is what we call the conclusion. The conclusion functions to establish goodwill and express gratitude. Because in the body, you already stated your purpose. In the conclusion, you would want to thank the recipient for reading your letter. So thank the recipient for his or her time and consideration. You are not thanking him or her in advance. Instead, you are thanking him or her for the time he or she has spent reading the letter and considering your inquiry. You include any permission you may need for quoting him or her in your work if you are seeking information. You can also provide your contact information such as address, email, and phone number so that when the recipient would be able to receive your inquiry letter, they would be able to reach out to you for the answers on your inquiries. Next slide, please. Thank you. And the next part of the inquiry letter is what we call the characteristics. For the characteristics of inquiry letter, first, you need to write clearly and concisely. Why? It is because you need to be direct to the point when you're asking the question. You should not be running around the bush. It's like, for example, if you would want to know the price and product of, for example, a cell phone, you need to ask it directly so that the answers you would be receiving is also in direct form. Next is be considerate and provide a sufficient timeline. When we are writing a inquiry letter, we need to consider that there are a lot of inquiries that your recipient is receiving. So you have to be very patient. You have to be very considerate in waiting for the answers from your inquiry. And lastly, we have to provide a route for a response, such as a self-addressed stamp envelope or what we call SAST. Next slide, please. Now, this is an example of an inquiry letter. So as what you can see there in the inquiry letter, you have there the date, you have there the address of the recipient, you also have there the name. Like for example, this is a type of a sales related inquiry letter. So the sender would want to know the following details. For example, here the RAM, the storage, the camera features, and so on and so forth. And also, he provided the price range for the laptop that he is looking for. So, also on the end or the conclusion part of the letter, you see there that the sender was able to thank the recipient for reading the letter and as well as the contact information.
Okay, so now let us proceed to the second type of letter that we are going to discuss, which is the claim letter. Next slide, please. So a claim letter is a persuasive letter sent by a customer to a business or agency to identify a problem with a product or service and can also be referred as a letter of complaint. So claim letter is typically a request for adjustments or refund or even replacement for damages through a cardinal opening paragraph about the transaction or product may be preferred. Please, the next slide. So here is the sample of a claim letter. So later on, I will be discussing the things that is present in the claim letter. Next slide. Let us proceed to the main elements of a claim letter. Next slide. So there are four elements of having a claim letter. So the first one is you need to have a clear explanation of the complaint. The second one is that an explanation of what strife this has caused or losses suffered because of it. So for example, you are writing a claim letter because your order is not you receive a different order. Okay, so you need to explain the product that you're supposed to be receiving. Next is an appeal to honesty and fairness. And lastly, the statement of what you would consider a fair adjustment in return. So in every claim letter, the fourth one is very important because uh, the seller and also the receiver should have a fair adjustment to have a good communication. Next slide. Let us proceed to the common types of claim letter. So I have here listed the 5 common types of claim letter. Next slide, please. So we have here claim letter for damaged goods. So insurance claim letter, warranty, claim probated letter, and claim objection letter. So this 5 claim letter is the usual claim letter that a company, especially a product, is receiving. Okay, so next slide. Let us proceed to the components of a claim letter. So a standard claim letter needs to have the following elements or component in it. So next slide. So first, of course, you need to have a full information on the faulty product or dissatisfactory service. Okay, so you need to have the full details of the product or the service that needs to be refunded. Next is the in case of a product or an ad details of it, purchasing date, arrival, quantity purchase, model, numbers, size, color, or any details that pinpoints to the product, you need to also list that down. Okay. Next slide. The third one is you need to identify, next slide please. You need to identify whether it is a defect or a mistake. So you need to address if the product that you receive is a defect, or there is something or some parts that are missing, or a mistake. So like what I said earlier, for example, you are expecting uh, you're ordered to be arriving this time. However, when it arrives, it's different from your expecting. Okay, so for that, you need to be sure whether it is faulty product or a deviation in terms and condition of the contract regarding the products. For example, because sometimes it's not the company's fault. Actually, maybe during the transportation or the transferring of goods, there might be some um, unfortunate events happen. So always say whether is it a defect or a mistake. And lastly is you need to mention the amount of money you want to claim, or if it's proper products that you wish to get as a refund and as a result of the damage caused by the offender. So basically the fourth one suggests what will be the solution of the what what do you want to have as a solution for this kind of problem? Do you want the company to refund your money, or do you want the company to give you the item, a new item for that product? Okay, so next slide, please. So here is the process of writing a claim letter. Next slide. So first, of course, you need to add, next slide, please. So first you need to add the your name, and of course the name of the organization if you have one, and any necessary contact details. So make sure to add the date, next the address, address the letter to department head or to whom that you are writing to. So always include those things. Next is the subject line. Mention the reference number of the order. If the product don't have any reference number, then you don't have to write it down. Next is that after the proper salutation, indicate that you're making a claim and a type of it. So you need to indicate what is the problem of the product, and if it's an insurance claim, then include the policy number. Next is number 4. In the next paragraph, include the details of the accident and specific circumstances. So basically, in this part, you are going to tell in your letter what happened, or what is the main problem on your product. Number 5 is, next slide, indicate the amount you're claiming and the date within which you would require it. So this is a very important part. So you need to, if you want to claim the amount or to have a refund, you need to state also the claiming amount and also the date within which you would want to require it. Next is you can attach documents to validate your claim, such as pictures or anything that proves that that the product that was sent to you was has a defect on it, or it's a mistake. Okay, and number 7 is asking for a quick help that you anticipate and end the letter. Okay, and lastly, of course, you have to sign with your type name. So I think that's for the process of writing a claim letter. I think that's all. Okay, let us proceed to the tips to remember. So these are the do's and don'ts that you need to know for writing such a letter. So first, next slide. So don't add invalid claims to matter the recipient has no hand in. Okay. So number 2 is do not add threatening messages or accusation. If you were supposed to receive a yellow threads and got red ones instead, and your garments workers do it with red ones, your thread company is responsible for sending the wrong thread. So, but your supervisor is responsible for not stopping the worker or letting the production workers know it isn't the right one. So basically, in the number two, you don't have to like you need to control what you feel. Okay, so you don't have to add in your claim letter some threatening messages or accusation. Okay, number three is don't address it to a company as a whole. So you need to address it to a person. And number four, next slide, you have to remain courteous and show respect. Even though that you're experiencing such kind of inconvenience, you have to still remain courteous and you have to show respect. Okay, number five is don't make mistake in your claim. It will make things worse. So especially in the product number or control number, you have to double check everything. Okay. Number six is send it within the prescribed time for the claim to be valid. So usually the prescribed time for the claim to be valid is usually 7 days a week. Okay, so you have to send it for a week. And lastly, even if you have been wrong, maintain a positive tone and end with goodwill. So we all know that mistakes can happen, but know that this may not be the only time you will do business with them. So you might need to do business with them again in the future. So don't be on the bad terms with the recipient. Okay, so here in the last part, you just have to be professional. Okay, so I think that's all for the claim letter. Let us now proceed to the sales letter.